Going for gold, are the Olympic Games worth it? In 2017, the International Olympic Committee, also known as the IOC, made an unprecedented decision to award both of the 2024 potential candidates an Olympic Games each, giving the 2024 Olympics to Paris and the 2028 Olympics to LA. This was unlike anything we've seen, likely due to the dwindling numbers of bidders, which caused the IOC to worry whether there'd be any more cities willing to host in the future. As interest hits an all-time low, the Olympics is nearing its final straw and without any changes could very well disappear in the next few decades. This leads into our inquiry question. What measures could be implemented in order to make hosting the Olympic Games more appealing for potential host cities?
So who cares? Well, firstly, the athletes definitely do, as the Olympic Games are often the pinnacle event of their careers, giving them a chance to be national idols for a short period of time. For the host city, presenting your city in an event like this can lead to increased international exposure, increased trade and exports, as well as a temporary boost in the local economy that can act as a catalyst for infrastructure and other developments. Now, I'm not sure what memories any of you have, if any, of the 2010 Olympic Games here in Vancouver, but these celebratory parades are one of my favorites. For many people, the Olympic Games are more than just an event. They're an experience and they're an atmosphere. They are seeing that maple leaf on the top step of the podium and being just that little bit more proud to be Canadian. For the citizens of the host city, the Olympic Games is a once-in-a-lifetime experience of celebration and of inspiration. These little intangible effects can often make the case that the Olympic Games are more worthwhile than we think.
In brief, our solution will focus on two main issues: reducing the overall cost for host cities and increasing the sustainability of Olympic legacies. To understand our solution, let's firstly explore two problems with the Olympics that negatively affects host cities: the impractical bidding process and the burden of sports infrastructure. The Olympic bidding process has a major flaw. Bids are evaluated by their flamboyancy, and therefore, practicality is often disregarded and costs are often underestimated. For example, Athens' 2004 bid predicted a final cost of $1.6 billion. However, this total cost ended up actually being $16 billion. We see that problems like these are brought out when practicality isn't a focus during the bidding process. The second part of this problem is IOC corruption. Cities that are interested in hosting can spend up to $100 million for the sole purpose of wooing the IOC to vote for them. And this has caused the bidding process to be often mired in corruption controversy. The second problem that host cities face is that they usually do not have the required sports infrastructure and therefore need to build additional specialized facilities such as velodromes, ski jumping complexes, and specialized stadiums. For this reason, Boston's failed 2024 bid proposed the construction of a $400 million stadium, despite already having 4 pre-existing and ready-to-use ones. To deem these facilities worthy investments, cities rely on their continued use following an Olympic hosting. However, these facilities are often financial burdens, since they are underutilized and have very high maintenance fees. Facilities like these have gotten the name white elephants, and in response to this problem, cities have tried extreme repurposing, but this too comes with a very high cost. For example, the Bird's Nest, Water Cube, and Queen Elizabeth Olympic Stadium have had to be repurposed, some costing almost as much as a stadium itself.
There are multiple potential solutions that can address these issues, one of them being a complete reform of the IOC into a more non-profit organization. By doing so, not only will we be able to address the corruption issue, we can also lower the overall expenses of hosting. While this can be very effective, it is by far our least realistic solution. Another alternative is to downsize the games. Decreasing the amount of games in the Olympics will decrease the infrastructure as well as the operational expenses. However, removing a sport from the Olympics is a very contentious debate which can cause public backlash. As such, we chose our solution to be based on increasing the range of the Olympics as well as including a sustainability check during the bidding process.
Now, in his study on the future of the Olympic Games, Martin Schnitzer and his research partner concluded that when it comes to the future of the Olympic Games, experts see the reduction of costs for bidding and staging, as well as becoming flexible in the game's management as the most crucial recommendations. Our chosen solution fits in very nicely with this conclusion, as we are, as Sam briefly mentioned before, focusing on 1, reducing the overall cost, and 2, increasing the sustainability of the event. Firstly, in the reduction of the overall cost, we would support a greater region to host the Olympic Games. In other words, we support Olympic regions as opposed to Olympic cities. For example, this is the 2026 bid for the World Cup, set to be hosted by a combination of cities throughout Canada, Mexico, and the United States. By spreading out the games amongst a region like this, it should lead to less need for new buildings, reducing the white elephant infrastructure, as well as leading to lower overall costs. To return back to our solution, our second focus was on increasing the sustainability of this event. In doing so, we would propose a thorough sustainability review that would need to be submitted by any potential host, one that regards reusing pre-existing stadiums, a plan for future use of all new infrastructure, as well as a proposal for how they will continue to use the legacy of the games to promote their city. In fact, our chosen solution can actually be partially seen in the planning of future Winter Olympic Games, widely considered to be the more affordable of the two games. As you can see here, the average of previous games and the average of the 10 potential bids all vying for the 2026 games, you can see that the budget of these bids is significantly lower and they use significantly more pre-existing venues. But what comes with using pre-existing venues instead of making new venues in more convenient locations? Well, there's going to be a greater max distance in between the venues. This shows that our solution can be feasibly implemented, as the Winter Olympic Games seem to already be heading towards this direction.
There are multiple implications regarding the solution. For one, all host cities and their citizens will be able to partake in the fame and prestige of the Olympics. It would also promote better relations between the hosting cities. Hosting an event as large as the Olympics creates the framework for cities to improve their political and economic relations with each other. By including sustainability check, as well as reusing more pre-existing infrastructure, it will considerably decrease the financial burden on the host cities. However, like every solution, art comes with its own limitations as well. First, it will become less of an Olympic experience for the tourist. As the range of the games expand, the experience will feel less vibrant as events become decentralized. It will also create lots of complexity in the hosting process. As we all know, hosting the Olympics is no small undertaking. It requires an enormous amount of effort and an entire decade ahead in order to plan this mega event. To have multiple additional host cities is to create further complications within this intricate process. Lastly, our solution will not be able to fully address the corruption in IOC.
Now, as I mentioned way back at the start of this presentation, the Olympic Games here in Vancouver back in 2010 was a truly special experience. But for me, being so young at that time, all I really have left is a few scattered memories and this stuffed Sasquatch named Quachi. With Vancouver looking towards rehosting the games in 2030, we hope that these suggestions can be implemented to ensure that those games are as successful as possible here in our hometown. Thank you.
Well, last question for you. Thinking about the work of your two fine colleagues here, which one of them had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of this topic?
It would be probably Jaden's. He researched on the social and tangible benefits such as the feel-good factor and increased civic engagement. For me, I studied economic cost, and initially in my research, I believed that the Olympics were solely hosted for economic reasons. After I found out they turned out to be like economic failures, it turns out, and after I read Jaden's research, I found out that there was multiple other benefits, such as the social benefits I said, the increased civic engagement, that was actually very impactful and was one of the main reasons why cities are hosting it now, and also serves as a good example of why we should continue to host the Olympics.
Perfect. Thank you. Jaden, question for you. Think about an example of a compelling argument that one of the three of you encountered in your studies, but that we did not see in the presentation today. Why did you choose to exclude it?
So in Sam's IRR, he had an argument that unsuccessful bids actually give you very similar economic benefits than successful bids because just by submitting the bid, you are signaling to the world that you're opening up to increased globalization, increased trade, and just seeing yourself as wanting to be one of the top cities in the world. And so other cities take notice, and so even by failing a bid, you can still gain these benefits. But we kind of found that while that is kind of it's kind of a fascinating thing because it seems counterintuitive, but we found that in our solution that in the whole our slideshow, the way it went through, we wanted to talk about the problem, then our solution, and then kind of connect them together. We found that this sort of detail didn't really need to be shown, and we could instead just talk about how it would increase trade and exports just in general, and allow more time for us to talk about the things we deem more important, such as details about the solution and examples and such.
Very good. And finally, Sam, tell us about an idea from either Ellis or Jaden's work that changed the way that you think about your team's focus here, the overall question. What was that and how did it change your thinking?
Yeah, so at first I thought that if you want to analyze the benefits from Olympics, like for example, the net revenue, you can just see all the tourists that come for the Olympics and just add that total up. But then after reading Ellis's IRR, he made the argument that that net value is going to be overstating the actual value because you're actually decreasing tourism in other areas. So due to congestion in the city, tourists that see this event going on in the future, they're going to be like, so we don't want to go here because it's going to be very crowded. Let's just go somewhere else. And if you don't take this into account, you're going to overstate your benefits.
That makes sense. That's great. All right. Well, nice job. Let's give you one more round of applause.